This is why the UK still struggles to expand airports despite rising demand and global competition increasing every year. Across the United Kingdom, airport expansion faces multiple barriers that go far beyond construction. This breakdown reveals the real forces slowing growth and why the system remains locked. Countdown begins. 10. Local opposition and legal challenges. Airport expansion in the United Kingdom rarely begins with construction. It begins with resistance. Communities living near major airports have consistently pushed back against expansion plans due to noise, environmental concerns, and the risk of displacement. These concerns have not remained at the level of public opinion. They have moved directly into the legal system. Court challenges have become a defining feature of major airport projects, delaying progress for years at a time. Even when approvals are granted, they are often contested again, creating a cycle of legal review and delay. This slows momentum and increases uncertainty for developers and policymakers. So while expansion may be technically approved on paper, the reality on the ground tells a different story. And just when legal barriers seem manageable, financial pressure begins to rise rapidly. 9. Construction cost inflation. The cost of building airport infrastructure has increased sharply in recent years. Materials, labor, and supply chain disruptions have all contributed to rising budgets across the construction sector. For airport projects, which already require massive investment, this inflation creates a serious challenge. Budgets that were once considered viable now face significant overruns. Investors and governments must now reconsider the financial risks involved. Projects become harder to justify when costs increase faster than expected returns. This creates hesitation, and hesitation slows progress. But even if funding were secured, another constraint exists that money alone cannot solve. Look above the runway, and the problem becomes clear. 8. Airspace congestion over the UK. The skies above the United Kingdom are among the busiest in Europe. Aircraft from domestic routes, international flights, and military operations all share limited airspace. This creates congestion that limits how many additional flights can be introduced, even if airport infrastructure expands. In simple terms, more runways do not automatically mean more capacity in the air. Efforts to modernize and redesign airspace are underway, aiming to improve efficiency and reduce delays. But these changes require coordination across multiple sectors and take years to implement. So even as airports consider expansion, the airspace itself remains a limiting factor. And while the skies are crowded, the process on the ground is not much simpler. 7. Planning permission complexity. Before construction can begin, airport expansion projects must pass through a complex approval system. This includes environmental assessments, public consultations, and multiple layers of government review. Each stage introduces new requirements, potential objections, and opportunities for delay. The process is thorough by design, but it also extends timelines significantly. Some projects take more than a decade just to move from proposal to approval. By that time, economic conditions and political priorities may have already shifted. This creates a paradox. Plans are developed for future demand, but by the time approval is granted, the original assumptions may no longer hold. And that uncertainty leads directly into the next challenge. 6. Post-pandemic demand uncertainty. Passenger demand across the aviation industry has changed in ways that are still being understood. While overall travel numbers have recovered, the composition of that demand has shifted. Leisure travel has returned strongly, driven by tourism and personal travel. Business travel, however, has not fully returned to previous levels. This creates uncertainty about long-term demand patterns. Airports and investors must now make decisions without complete clarity about future growth. Expanding too aggressively could lead to underused infrastructure. Expanding too slowly could create capacity shortages, This balancing act makes long-term planning more difficult. And while demand remains uncertain, another structural issue continues to shape where growth is concentrated. 5. Regional airport imbalance. The UK's aviation network is heavily centred around London. Major airports in the capital handle a large share of international traffic, while many regional airports operate below their full capacity. This imbalance creates inefficiencies. Instead of distributing traffic across the network, demand is concentrated in already crowded hubs. Efforts have been made to encourage airlines and passengers to use regional airports more effectively. However, changing established travel patterns is not easy. Passengers often prefer direct routes from major hubs, and airlines prioritize high-demand locations. As a result, pressure remains focused on a small number of airports. And within those airports, another system quietly controls how many flights can actually operate. 4. Airline slot restrictions. At the busiest airports in the United Kingdom, growth is not simply a matter of demand. It is controlled by a rigid system of slot allocation. Every takeoff and landing requires a slot, and at major hubs, those slots are already fully assigned. Airlines cannot add flights freely, even when passenger demand increases. Instead, they must acquire slots from existing holders, which rarely become available. This creates a closed system where expansion is limited by allocation rules rather than physical infrastructure alone. What makes this more restrictive is that long-established airlines retain priority. New entrants face barriers, and competition becomes limited. So even if new runways were built, the system would still need restructuring to allow real growth. And just when operational limits seem clear, environmental pressure introduces an even deeper constraint. 3. Carbon emissions and net zero targets. The United Kingdom has committed to reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Aviation plays a significant role in national emissions, placing airport expansion directly under environmental scrutiny. Every increase in flight capacity raises concerns about long-term sustainability. Expanding airports is no longer just an engineering challenge. It is now a climate issue tied to national policy. Projects must meet strict environmental standards before they can proceed. This includes addressing emissions, noise impact, and long-term sustainability goals. Here is where the tension becomes clear. Economic growth depends on connectivity and air travel. Environmental commitments demand reduction in emissions. Balancing these two forces has become one of the most difficult challenges in modern infrastructure planning. And while environmental limits shape what is possible, political decisions determine what actually moves forward. 2. Government policy uncertainty. Airport expansion in the UK has been shaped by shifting political priorities over time. Different governments have supported, delayed, or reconsidered projects based on changing economic conditions and public pressure. This lack of consistency creates uncertainty for investors and developers. Large infrastructure projects require long-term planning and stable policy direction. Without that stability, confidence declines. Projects move forward, then pause, then face new reviews. Each shift adds time and complexity. This unpredictability affects not only individual projects, but the entire aviation strategy of the country. And all of these challenges converge in one single project that has become the symbol of the UK's expansion struggle. 1. Heathrow third runway delays. The proposed third runway at Heathrow stands at the centre of the UK's airport expansion debate. First introduced decades ago, it has moved through multiple stages of approval, legal challenge, and political reconsideration. Despite its importance in increasing national capacity, construction has not begun as of 2026. The project has become a case study in how complex infrastructure can stall under competing pressures. Legal opposition, environmental concerns, financial risk, and policy shifts have all played a role in delaying progress. Each factor alone is significant. Combined, They create a near-constant state of uncertainty. What makes this situation remarkable is that Heathrow remains one of the busiest international airports in the world, operating near capacity. Yet its most critical expansion project remains unresolved. This reflects a broader reality. The challenge facing UK airport expansion is not a single obstacle. It is a system of constraints that reinforce each other, slowing progress at every stage. And until these constraints are addressed collectively, expansion will continue to move slowly, even as demand continues to grow. Airport expansion in the United Kingdom is shaped by a complex network of challenges that extend far beyond construction. Legal resistance, financial pressure, environmental limits, and policy uncertainty all combine to slow progress in a system that demands long-term coordination. If you found this breakdown valuable, like the video, share it, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of global infrastructure and aviation systems. Which of these challenges do you think is the most difficult to solve in the long term?